Most people imagine cyber as something dramatic. A mysterious hacker in a dark room, typing quickly as lines of code scroll across a screen. It's a familiar image in movies and news headlines. But in reality, some of the most damaging security incidents in the world don't begin with an outside attacker at all. They begin with a completely legitimate employee doing something ordinary.
BreachBytes TV.
Sometimes it's someone clicking a link in an email they shouldn't trust. Sometimes it's someone uploading a file to the wrong cloud service. Sometimes it's a well-meaning employee trying to work faster by bypassing security controls. None of these people think of themselves as security risks. In fact, most of them believe they're just trying to do their jobs efficiently. But in cybersecurity, intent doesn't always matter as much as outcome. The uncomfortable truth is that the most dangerous employee in many organizations isn't malicious. It's simply someone who unknowingly opens the door to an attacker. To understand why this happens, it helps to recognize that modern workplaces run on convenience. Companies want employees to move quickly, collaborate with ease, and access information from anywhere. Cloud services make files instantly shareable. Messaging platforms allow teams to communicate across continents in seconds. Remote work tools allow employees to log in from laptops, tablets, and phones from almost any location. All of this flexibility makes businesses more productive. But it also creates a complicated security environment where thousands of small decisions made by employees can affect the safety of an entire organization. Attackers understand this dynamic extremely well. They know that breaking encryption or hacking sophisticated infrastructure is difficult and time-consuming. But convincing a human being to trust something they shouldn't is often surprisingly easy. Instead of attacking systems directly, many cybercriminals focus on manipulating employees. A phishing email might look like a routine document request from a coworker. A fake login page might look identical to a company's real authentication portal. A fraudulent invoice might appear to come from a trusted vendor. When an employee interacts with one of these traps, the attacker doesn't need to break through security barriers. The employee has already opened the door for them. This is why cybersecurity professionals often talk about something called the human attack surface. Every employee with access to systems, data, or company networks represents a potential entry point for an attacker. The more people who have access to systems, the larger that attack surface becomes. In large organizations, thousands of employees may have login credentials, cloud storage permissions, messaging accounts, and administrative access to various tools. Managing and protecting all of those identities becomes one of the most complex challenges in cybersecurity. But the risk isn't limited to phishing attacks. Sometimes the danger comes from simple mistakes. An employee might accidentally share a sensitive document using a public link instead of a restricted one. Someone might reuse the same password across multiple services, unknowingly exposing their account when another website experiences a breach. A developer might store access keys in a public code repository without realizing the consequences. Each of these situations seems small on its own, but attackers actively search for exactly these kinds of opportunities. What makes these scenarios especially dangerous is that they often appear completely normal in system logs. If an employee logs in using their real credentials, security systems may see nothing suspicious. If a user accesses files they technically have permission to open, the action may not trigger any alarms. From the system's perspective, everything looks legitimate. But from the attacker's perspective, those legitimate actions may be providing exactly the access they need. This is why insider risk has become one of the most serious concerns in modern cybersecurity. Insider risk doesn't always mean malicious employees stealing data. In fact, most insider incidents involve people who had no intention of causing harm. They simply made decisions without fully understanding the security implications. Yet the consequences can still be severe. A single compromised account can lead to stolen intellectual property, exposed customer information, or unauthorized financial transactions. Organizations try to address this risk through security awareness training. Employees are taught how to recognize phishing emails, protect their passwords, and report suspicious activity. While this training is valuable, it isn't a complete solution. Humans are naturally trusting, busy, and sometimes distracted. Even well-trained employees can make mistakes when they are under pressure or dealing with a convincing attack. Cybercriminals know this and design their attacks to exploit moments when people are most likely to act quickly without double-checking. Because of this, many modern security strategies assume that mistakes will happen. Instead of relying entirely on employees to make perfect decisions, organizations are building systems that limit the damage when something goes wrong. Multi-factor authentication, for example, adds an additional verification step so a stolen password alone cannot grant access. Zero-trust architectures continuously evaluate whether a user's behavior matches expected patterns. Access controls limit which systems each employee can interact with, reducing the potential impact of a compromised account. These approaches don't eliminate the human factor in cybersecurity, but they help contain it. If an employee accidentally enters credentials into a phishing site, multi-factor authentication may prevent attackers from logging in. If an account begins accessing unusual systems, behavior monitoring tools may detect the anomaly and trigger an investigation. By layering these protections together, organizations reduce the likelihood that a single mistake will escalate into a major breach. At the same time, companies are beginning to rethink how much access employees truly need. In the past, it was common for workers to accumulate permissions over time as their responsibilities changed. Someone who switched roles might keep access to systems they no longer use simply because no one removed it. Over months or years, these leftover permissions could create hidden vulnerabilities. Modern security models emphasize the principle of least privilege, which means users should only have access to the specific resources necessary to perform their current job. This approach significantly reduces risk, because even if an employee account becomes compromised, the attacker's capabilities remain limited. Instead of gaining broad access to the entire environment, the attacker may only be able to interact with a small set of systems. Containing access in this way helps prevent the kind of widespread damage seen in many major breaches. Ultimately, the goal of modern cybersecurity is not to eliminate employees as a risk. That would be impossible. People are the reason organizations exist in the first place. Instead, the goal is to design systems that recognize human behavior realistically. Humans will occasionally make mistakes. They'll trust the wrong email, reuse passwords, or click links too quickly. Effective security strategies acknowledge these realities and build safeguards that minimize the consequences. The idea that the most dangerous employee isn't a hacker might sound alarming at first, but it doesn't mean employees are the enemy. In fact, they are often the first line of defense. Employees who recognize suspicious emails, report unusual activity, and follow good security practices help organizations detect threats earlier. The difference between a minor security incident and a major breach often comes down to whether someone notices something unusual and speaks up quickly. Cybersecurity is often described as a technological battle, but at its core, it's really about understanding human behavior. Attackers study how people make decisions, how they respond to urgency, and how they react to authority or familiarity. Defenders must do the same, by designing systems that account for human tendencies rather than ignoring them. Organizations can create environments where mistakes are less likely to turn into disasters. And as cyber threats continue evolving, one lesson is becoming increasingly clear. The future of cybersecurity won't be defined only by stronger encryption, better firewalls, or more advanced detection tools. It will also depend on how well organizations understand the human element inside their own networks. Because sometimes the most dangerous vulnerability isn't a flaw in software, it's a moment of misplaced trust. One of the biggest reasons this issue keeps getting worse is that technology moves faster than people adapt their security habits. Every year we add more smart devices, more accounts, more apps, and more online services. But most people are still using the same security habits they developed 10 or even 15 years ago. Attackers know this, and they design their attacks around predictable human behavior. For example, many people believe that if something looks professional, it must be legitimate. But modern phishing kits allow attackers to perfectly copy websites from banks, streaming services, and even government portals. In some cases, the fake site is nearly impossible to distinguish from the real one. This means attackers no longer need to break complicated encryption systems. They simply trick users into handing over their credentials. Another reason the problem keeps growing is automation. Cybercriminal groups now run large-scale automated systems that scan the internet looking for reused passwords, exposed accounts, and vulnerable logins. Instead of targeting one person at a time, attackers can test millions of credentials across thousands of websites in a matter of minutes. The result is that small mistakes, like reusing a password or clicking the wrong link once, can quickly escalate into full account takeovers, financial fraud, or identity theft. Understanding how these attacks scale is the first step toward protecting yourself from them. If you want to understand how modern cyber attacks actually work and how organizations are adapting to defend against them, subscribe for more videos breaking down the hidden realities of cybersecurity. See you in the next one.